here now. This is Ann Steiner.
Hey, Ian, I'm Ward Miller.
So I want Ann to maximize her time with you, even
Is the recording on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna call the meeting order. This is the Commissioner of Chicago Landmarks, our regular meeting. Today's date is Thursday, June 9th. I'm gonna do the roll call of commission members, Vice Chair Commissioner Jenkins. Here. Commissioner Boatright,
Here.
Commissioner Burns, maybe. Commissioner Fair, here. Commissioner Rubin.
Here.
Commissioner Tulliver. And I am Commissioner Wong. We do have a quorum. I'd like to ask anybody wishing to make a statement on today's agenda to complete a public comment card and give the card to a member of the staff. Comment cards are available at the door. As courtesy to other individuals offering, wishing to offer comments, we ask that members of the general public limit their statements to 3 minutes or less. When the time comes for public comment on the individual item on the agenda, I'll call names from the cards and ask you to come forward. Well, there's no microphone today, so just speak up to make your statement. At that point, please state your name and the interest organization or company you represent, if any. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. That meeting was on May 8th. The meeting minutes were included in the packets. Is there any discussion? Having none, I'd like to request a motion to approve those minutes. Is there a motion? So move Commissioner Tulliver, second by Commissioner Zekowitz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Second item on the agenda is a preliminary landmark recommendation for Fred C. Beeson House number 4, located at 5830 West Midway Park. This is in the 29th Ward and Camden. Michelle.
Great. So today we're bringing the Beeson House number 4 before you for your consideration regarding preliminary landmark status for the property. The owner, Mr. Adrian Navarre, submitted his home as a suggestion to the program committee last year. There we go. The property is located at 5830 West Midway Park in the Austin community on Chicago's west side. The property is marked here with the red rectangle. Beeson House number 4 sits on a large lot with the garage at the northeast corner. Looking at the homes to the rear of the property and across the street, you can see that there is greater density. Excuse me 1 second while I switch out. That's what I wanted to use. Okay. Homes on the east are City of Chicago landmarks, the ones that are labeled part of the 4 houses by Schock Group designated in 1999. So Historic Preservation Division staff believe that the Fred C. Beeson House number 4 meets 3 criteria for Chicago landmark designation, including criterion 1 for heritage. In 1865, developer Henry Austin bought several hundred acres east of Oak Park to create a temperance settlement. Austin's vision was to build a pastoral suburb with gracious living in the form of elegant homes on spacious lots along tree-lined parkways. This is a view of the 5800 block of Midway Park from 1910, as it would look after the trees had matured. Note the median in the center of the wide street. Austin became the seat of the nascent Cicero Township, but growth started slowly. That growth was fueled by the construction of a railroad station in 1866. In 1874, Austin had about 1,000 residents. It was not until hourly suburban train service was established in the 1880s that much of the community's growth really took off, however. Architect Schock was hired to design a new train station in 1886. After its completion, undeveloped properties began to sell more swiftly. By the 1890s, Austin's population was estimated to be around 4,000. Architect Schock had moved to Austin in 1886 after building his home at the corner of Midway Park and what was then Prairie Avenue, now Menard. This 1895 Sanborn map shows the proximity of Midway Park to the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad line at the bottom. It also shows the large lots along Midway Park, which Fred Beeson purchased in the 1890s. Architect Schock's connections with Austin began before he completed his home. In 1885, a large commercial block containing a hotel, post office, multiple stores, and gathering halls for private clubs like the Masons and the Oaks burned down. The owner asked Schock to draw up plans to replace it. With this high-profile commission, Schock's name was established as a go-to architect for Austin. He was asked to remodel existing homes and build numerous others. He was also asked to design several major public buildings for Austin. With this reach, Schock helped to establish the visual identity of the suburb in its boom years of the 1880s, 90s, and beyond. One of the buildings Schock was asked to design was the Austin Library and Clubhouse. Schock understood the value of connections for his architecture business. When the library committee desired a new library, Schock was on the library board. And instead of a modest library, the project grew to a much larger, grander structure to include meeting quarters for the Oaks. The club known as the Oaks had been incorporated in 1884, and prominent Austin citizens joined. Connections there proved fruitful for Schock, who became president in 1886. Schock also became involved in politics, successfully running to be on the Cicero Township Board and subsequently its president. There was no more high-profile architect in Austin than Schock. Fred Beeson was also part of the Oaks. Beeson had worked his way up in the Chicago Veneer Company and was finally secretary and manager when he asked Schock to design a home for him in Austin, which was completed in 1887. The Chicago Veneer Factory, which is labeled there on the map, was at 507 West Kinsey, directly opposite the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad, which led to Austin. Beeson was typical of the new residents of Austin in the 1880s and beyond. Often these were professionals, business executives, or factory owners who made their money in Chicago, but desired to escape it. One newspaper account described the railroad suburb of Austin as, quote, a retreat for those who, grown tired of the din of a city existence, desired to benefit by the rusticity of a suburban life. In this circa 1910 photo, which is of Midway Park, Schock's home is the one on the corner to the far right. And next door with the tall chimney is Beeson House number 2 from 1892. After its annexation in 1899, Austin continued to maintain an independent suburban identity. The construction of this home by factory executive Beeson and his social connections with its architect Frederick Schock reflect both the economic and social character of railroad suburbs like Austin that developed around Chicago in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Built toward the end of Austin's rapid economic rise in 1920, the home was sited on a spacious lot on the boulevard of Midway Park, exemplifying the early residential history and development of Austin as an area of high-quality single-family houses and mansions built at the turn of the century. In addition to Criterion 1, staff recommends the building meets Criterion 4 for exemplary architecture. 5830 consists of the main 2-story house and its garage at the northeast corner of the lot. Both are constructed from red brick. You can see that the garage at the right was designed very much in the style of the home, with a side gable and red brick and pointing. As such, it added rather than detracted to the property. Sorry, apparently we haven't been sharing, so I'm gonna. Okay. No, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. The home is an excellent example of residential architecture in a colonial revival style, one of the nation's most ongoingly popular styles during the 20th century, but one seen much less frequently in Chicago. It possesses numerous features characteristic to the style. including a rectangular two-story box form, a moderately pitched side gable roof, double hung multi-light windows, red brick masonry exterior, and decoration concentrated on a central door and entry. Other characteristics include classical details like the columns, pediments, and pointing. You can see the careful attention to detail characteristic of Schock's work. The home possesses a high quality of design, building materials, and excellent craftsmanship in traditional materials. As the last in a series of distinctly different homes, four, of course, by architect Frederick Schock, commissioned by Beeson, this home and its precedents reflect the changing architectural styles popular as Austin, the railroad suburb, grew to become a neighborhood after its annexation in 1899. Finally, staff believe that Schock is a significant architect whose work impacted the direction of architecture in the city and beyond. He was born in Chicago in 1854. After graduating from high school in 1872, he apprenticed with Henry Lord Gay, who himself had worked for architect W.W. Boyington. Schock moved on to the offices of Solon S. Beeman in 1880 and worked on the development of Pullman. After only 2 years with Beeman, he set up his own design firm. He designed residences, apartment buildings, commercial structures across the city in neighborhoods including Uptown, Kenwood, and Logan Square, and in suburbs such as Park Ridge, Oak Park, and River Forest. But his impact was greatest in Austin, where he built a relatively large concentration of residences as well as public and community buildings. Like Frank Lloyd Wright in Oak Park, Schock's prominence in the Austin community is still felt today as many of his buildings remain. Schock's work illustrates the richness and creativity of Chicago's architectural community at the end of the 19th century. In his own showpiece home and others created during his early years in Austin, Schock experimented with the ornate Queen Anne style, at times simplifying and abstracting it as the shingle style came into being. Architecture historian Alice Sinkovich argues that Schock's work directly influenced Frank Lloyd Wright during that famed architect's early years in the next-door suburb of Oak Park. Many historians have observed that the shingle style was the formative influence on Frank Lloyd Wright's subsequent Prairie School designs. On the left is the Marie Schock House from 1888, which Frederick built for his mother. This rare example of a small-scale shingle-style residence was built for the architect, combines most features of the style, including exaggerated gables, broad surfaces of shingle cladding, and minimal trim. Its success as an example of inexpensive yet attractive design caused it to be published in the National Architectural Magazine of the time. On the right is Wright's own house and studio in Oak Park from 1889. It's an important example of the shingle style and clearly has similarities to the Marie Schock House. And here on the left is the Henry Austin House. At right, another view of Frank Lloyd Wright's home and studio. In 1887, Schock completely remodeled the home inside and out to look like this. This home stood across the street from where Wright initially lived when he moved to Oak Park in 1888. Considering the internationally recognized design genius of Wright, his emulation of, or at the very least, similarity of design to Schock's designs constitutes high praise of Schock's work. Schock was prolific, especially in Austin, as I've said. The grand scale and quality of his designs for residential as well as public buildings helped to give the railroad suburb its distinctive identity. His civic and institutional buildings included the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad Depot, the Austin High School shown here. Two prominent remaining buildings are the Cicero Township Fire Station and the Austin State Bank Building. Although overshadowed in architectural history by the advance of the Prairie School of Architecture, the work of Frederick Schock has an enduring quality. Schock was a particularly skillful interpreter of popular styles, and he has a significant body of work throughout Chicago, its suburbs, and beyond, much of which still remains. So in addition to the criteria still discussed, Historic Preservation Division staff believe that the Beeson House maintains the separate integrity criterion. There are essentially no changes to the form or architectural materials, and even the garage has its original doors, which is pretty amazing. As we said at the beginning, this is in Ward 39, and Alderman Taliaferro did provide a letter of support. The owner is here and would probably like to make a statement.
Thank you, Gary. Does Commissioner have any questions for Ken? No? Well, that's good.
Yes, how you doing, everybody? Good afternoon. My name is Adrian Navarre. Candlewood, that was great. Thank you very much. I'm the property owner. This is myself, my wife, and our three beautiful children. These homes, haven't seen children in some decades, and, the two previous owners were single, up in age, never had children. Even our next door neighbors, the other two Beeson landmarks, so, this neighborhood is starting to change. And there's a lot more dog walkers and children running around, so having the alderman's support, having you guys hear us today, we really appreciate that. We think our suggestion would be a great complement to the already landmark shop houses in the Austin neighborhood. So thank you all very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does Commissioner have any questions of the owner?
No,
Just please.
thank you for, taking on kind of the stewardship, and, for cooperating process.
Straight. Yeah, your investment in the neighborhood is just warranted, so thank you. There was nobody that signed up for public comments. Therefore, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Fred C. Beeson House number 4, 5830 West Midway Park. Is there a motion? So moved. So moved, Commissioner Rubin, second by Commissioner Pierre. Do the roll call, Commissioner Bekowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Boatright,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, it's fantastic. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Bankers Building located at 105 West Adams. This is the 34th Ward, and Matt, this is your project.
Thank you, Chairman Wong and Commissioners. Another preliminary recommendation for your consideration is the Bankers Building, which is right here. An Art Deco skyscraper built in 1927. Not surprising given its name, it was catered to financial services firms in the 1920s, which was obviously a growing professional sector in the Loop at that time. It was for many years the tallest office building in the city's financial district, and it remains reportedly the tallest brick building in Chicago. It's located in the 34th Ward, as you said, at 105 West Adams. Closer view shows the building at the southwest corner of Adams and Clark Streets in the financial core of the Loop. We recommend that the building meets 3 criteria for Chicago landmark designation, including criteria number 1 for heritage, criterion 4 for its architecture, criterion 5 is the work of a significant architectural firm. The Bankers Building was commissioned by the Adams Clark Building Corporation, which was formed by Ernest A. Jackson. Prior to coming to Chicago, Jackson plied the cattle trade in Texas and real estate development in South Dakota. He came to Chicago in 1924 and he began acquiring commercial buildings in the Loop. The Bankers Building was Jackson's first foray into real estate development in Chicago. This is a 1926 rendering of the building that was part of an advertisement for real estate bonds that were sold to the public to finance the building's construction, the common practice in the 1920s. Jackson commissioned the Dilts Construction Company of Chicago as general contractor, and the company documented the construction of the building with photographs, beginning with the demolition of a late 19th century building, which was on the site in October 1926. And 2 weeks later, caissons were being placed for the foundation. December, construction of the steel structural frame was underway. By January, you begin to see the base of the building being finished out. February, it was nearly topped out. This is April 1927. And the building was ready for occupancy in summer of 1927. Contemporary accounts of the building's construction noted that it was completed in a remarkably short time with 240 working days, for an average of 5 days per floor. The composition of the building is defined by an exterior light court that creates prominent wings at the base of the building. Above this, the form of the building steps back as the building rises. This composition is largely a response to Chicago's first zoning ordinance of 1923. Here's a view of the Bankers Building in the foreground from around 1940. But back to that 1923 zoning ordinance, what it was trying to do was balance a demand for more office space in the Loop while also maintaining sunlight and air at street level. So the code in 1923 allowed the base of buildings to rise to 264 feet, and above that height, buildings could rise higher with a narrow tower, as long as the tower was not more than 25% of the building lot, and its volume was also limited. So that created an envelope in which architects had to build, and architectural historian Carol Willis looked at this and how it shaped Chicago, and also how the zoning code in New York shaped that city's central business district. And one approach that she found that the Chicago architects took was this. It was basically a base with tower form. So you have this blocky 264 foot tall base covering the entire building lot. And above that, you have these slender towers. So examples of this approach include the Carbide and Carbon building on the left, the Trustees System Service building in the middle, and Mather Tower. And Carol Willis then identified a second approach to the zoning problem that was more integrated. And the Bankers Building above left was the first example of this approach. This more integrated massing gives the impression of one central tower emerging from a low base and flanked by tall wings of about 20 stories. Other examples of this composition came later, including the Chicago Board of Trade and the LaSalle Wacker building. While the 1923 zoning code shaped the Bankers Building, so too did architectural styles, including the Art Deco and the Classical Revival. The Art Deco character of the building is derived from its overall verticality, created by its express piers that rise unbroken to the roof line with recessed spandrel panels. This view of the building shows the setbacks, which are really distinctive to the Art Deco design. So that setback quality enhances the actual sense of verticality that was so important to Art Deco. While the Art Deco was a forward-looking style of architecture, the Bankers Building also employs a more conservative Classical Revival ornamental treatment like this round at the main entrance on Clark, which is treated, if you look at it, as a triumphal arch, within which you have this panel showing crouched Atlantes or male figures holding a globe surrounded by classical symbols and swags. The ornament on the building is rendered in cast stone, which is a form of concrete and relatively uncommon in Chicago. It was manufactured by the Benedict Stone Corporation, which opened a plant in Chicago in 1924 when it received the massive commission to supply its material for the construction of Soldier Field. This advertisement by the company shows that it opened a showroom in the Bankers Building soon after it opened in 1927. With respect to Criterion 5 for architects, the Bankers Building was designed by the Burnham brothers. It was led by Daniel H. Burnham Jr. and Hubert Burnham, brothers, architects, and sons of Daniel H. Burnham, the celebrated Chicago architect and urban planner. In addition to the Bankers Building, their notable buildings also include the Carbide and Carbon building, a designated Chicago landmark and arguably Chicago's finest Art Deco skyscraper. And they designed the United States Customs House, which is listed in the National Register. This is in the South Loop. And right across the street, the Burnham Building from 1924, now the state of Illinois. With respects to integrity, we think it's met. Obviously, there's an aesthetic issue with the building. There's areas of buff brick that are recent replacements. And so you have the original brick that has not yet been cleaned, presenting this contrast of materials. Obviously, the intent is to clean the building soon, and that will bring it back to a uniform appearance. The other change of the building is loss of terracotta ornament at the top of the building, which you can see in the historic photo and compared to the current photo. Of course, this is not a uncommon loss for a building that's seen about a century of Chicago winters. And it's certainly that's something that could be brought back at some point. So to conclude, the building is in the 34th ward. Alderman Conway is in support of the proposal. In terms of what the significant historical architectural features should be, we recommend all exterior elevations, including roof lines of the buildings. It did have a lobby at one time with brass and marble. That is gone, so we don't believe there's any interior feature to include. In terms of the ownership, there's essentially two owners of the building. One is 105 Adams Development LLC. They're here today. They recently secured 68 million in TIF for a 400 unit office to apartment conversion on floors 11 to 40 that will include 30% affordable housing. And they are requesting landmark designation. The second owner is the lower floors of the building. It's an LLC. We've notified those owners of today's meeting. They're aware of it. I'm not sure if anyone's here from that party. Well, their position pursuant to the landmark designation is unknown, but I know that the owners of the 105 West Adams Development LLC are working and discussing with that owner to secure their support for this initiative. So that's all I have. I have to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Beth. Does the commissioner have any questions of Matt at this time? No? Folks, would you like to make a statement?
No, I'm excited to get this redeveloped for the city of
Can I
Chicago.
ask you for the name?
Oh, Gabriel Martinez, I'm sorry. Gabriel Martinez, the principal owner, 105 Development. We're excited to change it from office to resi, create a tax revenue for the city and work on other projects here in the city of Chicago. Myself, a 57-year resident of Chicago, formerly of Little Village, Hispanic, and we're excited. So my team's here, so they keep me on my toes. So there we go.
How many units again?
In total, 400.
Throughout the entire building, or just your?
My son, my portion of it.
Any other questions?
When's construction for the conversion supposed to begin?
We hope January 2026. Yes, sir.
Any chance you could help convince the other owners to get on board with some of the cleaning and? Side. I would just ask if you would rally support amongst the other owners for cleaning and some of the other things that were touched on for the exterior.
I would direct that to Liz Butler because there's a little bit of a situation right now and they're in foreclosure. So, but definitely we'd like to work with them.
So, yeah, Commissioner Fair, I do understand there's a representative from the other owner here.
Yes,
Yes?
yes,
Would you like to make a statement?
thank you. Very briefly, my name is Bernard Citron. I represent the operators of the guest quarters, which are the rest of the building that is not subject to the conversion to apartments. It's unfortunate that sign lists only have two places of support or opposed. I guess the best way to discuss this is we're concerned. We did not find out about this landmark process until very late and did not have time to sit with your staff to discuss what effects this would have. There's also, as kind of hinted at, the plan development has not been authorized by my client yet. And there's still some discussions. And one of the things I discovered is this morning is we actually own a slice through the building, including the exterior of the building. Not just like a condo, but we actually own the slice of the building. And we're not exactly sure how the landmark designation will operate with our ability to do things to the exterior of the building. We also don't understand how, if in fact this landmark status, if approved, may lead to historic tax credits, how that will operate with our ownership of this slice through the building. So we think there's some further discussions that need to be held before this building is actually landmarked. We respect what Matt put forward in terms of the architect and the style and everything else, but there's some very practical discussions that need to be held before this goes forward. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond. I appreciate the comments and concerns. I just want to remind the full commission that, you know, this is just the first step in the landmark designation process for the building. And our staff and the commission stand available to continue conversations. I know that you've had some conversations with Deanna from my staff on implications for landmark designation, what it means, what it doesn't mean, the fact that, you know, we have to have a proposal to respond to. It doesn't impose landmark or design requirements to you without us having a proposal that comes forward for us to respond to. And so I wanted to, for clarification purposes, make sure that we're all on the same page, make sure that we're abundantly clear that our staff stands committed to answer and to continue the conversations that we've already started with you and your full team to make sure that you guys are fully on board, comfortable and knowledgeable about what the process is and what it does to trigger.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does the commission have any
Oh, no.
clarifications? Yeah, I was actually gonna mention that this is the first step, which also means that there are several steps further to go before this takes place. So, Ms. Butler, it's
I just had a point. Thank you for recognizing me, Chair. Liz Butler on behalf of the property owner, 105 Development LLC. Just as a point of clarification, was wondering if council could clarify whether he's here representing the property owner or the operator of the.
I am here representing the operator of the hotel. Effectively, at this point, they've been operating their slice of the building, including paying for any type of maintenance and everything else with the building. So while not directly the owner, they are in effect paying for the maintenance of the building, and that's where some of these concerns come forward. They're concerned with the signage. They're concerned if in fact fire escapes may be subject to coming down, because that would require us to significantly reconfigure a portion of our property. Maybe all this would come out with further discussions.
It's you, Chris. Okay. Okay, that seems to be clear. There are any other questions of either parties? If not, folks there, actually, Mr. Stutfield, who signed up to speak, Mr. Miller.
Hi there. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ward Miller. I'm the Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of the nonprofit organization Preservation Chicago. And we're very happy to be here today and support the the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Bankers Building, also known as the Clark Adams Building. This is a significant structure in downtown Chicago, part of the financial district for almost 100 years. We recognize its importance both architecturally, historically, not only tied to Burnham Brothers, but also the LaSalle Street financial corridor, as well as the impact on the Mies van der Rohe Federal Center that we all very much admire. And Mies, as we all know, planned his buildings around his buildings of the Federal Center around these remarkable historic buildings, whether they be the the Marquette Building, which the plaza opens to, or the alignment of the Kluzinski Building, the Monadnock Building, and such structures as this. So we very much support this, this designation. We also realize it's part of the LaSalle Street Reimagined program, which is just critical to rethinking our historic office buildings in the loop. We feel that this will be a great addition to the loop and bring a certain sense of liveliness to the structure and to the area around it. And we very much support this designation. We've been working with the team over here. We've toured the building. It's a remarkable candidate and it should be a Chicago landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. There are no other public comments. Is there any further discussion by the commission? I would like to remind you again, preliminary landmark recommendation is about whether this building meets the criteria of landmark status. So with that being said, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Bankers Building located at 105 West Adams Street. Is there a motion?
So
So moved, Commissioner Boatright, second by Commissioner Jeffowitz. Okay, Commissioner Fair. Commissioner Rubin.
yes.
Commissioner Tolliver. Yes. And I am also yes. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a report from the Department of Planning and Development for the new Genesis Assembly of God Baptist Church located in 1400 Pennsylvania Avenue. And it's 37. Oh, this is
Yeah, the proposed designation of the new Genesis of God Baptist Church building does not raise any concerns or issues from any perspective. So I do not have a formal report for the commission, but I want to state for the record that I recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Walker? And at this time, there's no public comments, representative public comments. Therefore, I'd like to request a motion to take the next step in the designation process to request consent from the property owners. Is there a motion? So move, Commissioner Rubin, Commissioner Tolliver, seconds it. Commissioner Jeffowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Boatright. Oh. It would be a yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Fair.
Yes.
And we too, just made the motion. I am yes, also the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5 is a report for the public hearing and final landmark recommendation of the Erie Street Road located at 161 East Erie Street in the 42nd Ward. I want to announce that the public hearing was held on May 15th regarding the proposed landmark designation of the Erie Street Row at 161 East Erie Street. Commissioner Fair was the hearing officer for the commission. Before I call on Commissioner Fair for a report, let me state that the public hearing was the forum for introducing evidence and cross-examining witnesses for the proposed designation. The commission was given copies of any statements received, as well as the transcript and exhibits from the public hearing. That being said, I will allow brief comments from the property owners and any members of the public should they wish to address the commission. So, Commissioner Fair, unless you can proceed with the report.
Great, thank you. The public hearing on the proposed landmark designation of Erie Street Road located at 161 East Erie Street was held on May 15th at 1:30 p.m. in room 1003-A, City Hall, 121 North LaSalle Street. The purpose of the hearing was to gather relevant facts and information to assist the commission in deciding whether the building meets the criteria for landmark designation set forth in section 2-120-620 of the municipal code. I was the hearing officer on behalf of the commission. Copies of the public hearing transcript, commission documents, and statements submitted at the hearing have been distributed to the commission members. Originals of these documents have been made available to commission members and the public at the Historic Preservation Division's office. The commission staff's presentation recommending the proposal landmark designation was given by Matt Crawford of the Historic Preservation Division staff. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the commission's rules and regulations allow property owners to become parties to the hearing and or question the staff's presentation. The owner of the building, the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, was represented at the hearing by their consultant. The owners did not request party status and did not question the staff. In lieu of party status, the owner's consultant made a statement in opposition of the significant historical and architectural features of the building, which the commission identified in its preliminary recommendation of October 2020. No other statements in opposition were received. 6 members of the general public made statements in support of the landmark designation. 7 members of the general public attended the hearing. The total length of the hearing was 1 hour.
Thank you, Commissioner Fair. Any questions, of Commissioner Fair on the hearing? If not, I'm gonna call you, Matt, for your report.
Thank you, Chairman Wong and Commissioners. We've been in the designation process for the Erie Street Road for 8 months, since October. And we're at a point now where you can consider making a final recommendation for landmark status to City Council. The building is located at 161 East Erie Street in the 42nd Ward, and this is the near north side community area. Zooming in a bit closer, you can see the building is on Erie Street, just east of Michigan Avenue. In October, preliminarily, the building meets 3 criteria for a landmark designation, including number 1 for heritage, criterion 3 for the contributions of Johnson O'Connor and Eleanor Manning O'Connor, husband and wife, who in 1952 opened a branch of their research foundation in the building. And criterion 4 for architecture is a really rare surviving group of row houses in the near north side. In terms of criterion 1 for heritage, the Erie Street Road reflects the evolution of the near north side, one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, which began as an enclave of middle class and upper middle class residents, including many members of the very high class McCormick family, who built large mansions in this part of the city. Of course, all of this was destroyed in the Great Fire of 1871, which you can see in this view of the neighborhood. But it rebuilt quickly. 2 decades later, Graham McNally published this bird's eye view of the neighborhood showing the churches, institutional buildings, and high-style residences. And the Erie Street Row is part of that post-fire reconstruction. It was the oldest photograph of building that we can find. Based on the vintage of the car, we'd estimate this to be the 19-teens. If we zoom in on the photograph, we see that the row originally consisted of 5 row houses. The closest 2 in the photograph, closest to us, were demolished in 1960 to make way for the William Blair building at 545 North Michigan Avenue. Based on in terms of dating these buildings, we don't have permits for all of them, but based on the style and the use of Joliet limestone, very, very likely these are from the 1870s. We did find 1 permit for one of the houses, and that's the farthest one in the row. And you can see a cold joint between that particular unit and the rest of the row. But that unit was built in 1877 by an Irish immigrant and merchant named William Kwan for his family. Given that the entire row is all of a uniform design, it is likely that Kwan built the rest of the row at the same time or shortly thereafter, so 1877 or a few years after. Just looking at records, census records, city directories, who was living here, it was middle and upper class residents or from the late 19th century. In addition to merchants like Kwan, you had Albert Morgan Day, who's the president of the Chicago Stock Exchange, and John T. Noyes, who was a prominent attorney in Alderman. These upper and upper middle class families began to leave Erie Street Row around 1910, and by 1913, the entire row had been converted into an inn, the Greystone Inn, as you can see in this ad, which was advertised as a home-like family hotel near the lake and shopping. Looking at census records for who was in the building at this time, it was really single adult boarders who were staying there for quite some time. So the Erie Street Row kind of transformation from single-family residences to lodging reflects the neighborhoods, the near north side kind of waning in popularity as the Gold Coast to the north grew in popularity. So the near north side at this time began to transform into light industrial and warehouse uses. And then everything changed again in 1920. The Michigan Avenue Bridge was opened. Pine Street was converted to North Michigan Avenue, a very smart, high-end commercial streets. Buildings east of Michigan Avenue were increasingly converted to commercial use or just completely demolished. The Erie Street Row avoided this by converting from lodging to commercial and retail uses. And if you look at who was in the building in the 20s to the 50s, it was really creative enterprises. The building reflects the culture of the near north side from the 1920s to the 50s, when it was known as Tower Town for its proximity to the water tower. As early as 1894, you had a concentration of artists on the near north side when the Tree Studios was built. It's this building. This is just 5 blocks to the east of the Erie Street Row. This building was an oasis for painters, illustrators, and actors. So by the 1920s, you had what emerged in this area is called Tower Town. It was definitely a bohemian and artist enclave. And you see that kind of cultural activity coming to the Erie Street Row. This is a view of the building in 1930. As you can see, the two at the right, the westernmost row house is still intact in this view. As I mentioned earlier, those are now gone. But in 1920, you start to see creative industries coming into the row. The first of these was the J-Row and K Company. It was an international advertising firm. Ladies, number 159, 161, and 163. They connected those units. They opened up, created openings in the party walls, and made it basically a corporate headquarters for their advertising firm. The K Company also did some changes to the building which survive and we think are significant changes. One of them was that they dropped most of the entrances to sidewalk level and that they added those 2 steel frame bay windows at the first floor around the entrance to their offices. Those are all still in place and we think those are changes that have significance in their own right. So just looking at who was in this building from the 1920s to the 50s, the photograph at right is the offices of and studios of architect Philip Mayer. He was in here. He converted one of the buildings into his office, and he saw fit to have it professionally photographed. And so that's what you see there. You can also see the list of tenants that I found in the building. Great number of architects, publishing houses. Harcourt Brace was in here. We had also fashion houses, couturiers. We had the Vassar House restaurant. It was run by women who graduated from Vassar. And the whole point of the restaurant was to create a scholarship fund for other young women to go to the college. So it's really interesting mix in the 1920s, 30s to the 50s. In terms of criterion 4 for architecture, you preliminary found that it's a very early example of a party wall row house with a uniform design. Though painted, the front elevation is built of Joliet limestone, which we all know is Chicago's earliest building stone. Window and door openings are arched and topped with projecting keystones. Horizontal joints in the stone are exaggerated. And the row retains its original pressed metal cornice. These are all characteristic features of Italian architecture. As I mentioned, the steel frame projecting window bays are from the 20s. So too is you can see the way that the raised entrance was dropped to sidewalk level And those are significant changes that reflect the building's evolution. With regards to criterion 3 for significant persons, we recommend that the Erie Street Road derive some significance for its association with Johnson O'Connor, founder of the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, which has maintained a branch of its testing centers in the road since 1952, as well as his wife, Eleanor Manning O'Connor, who was an accomplished architect in her own right, and who promoted her husband's research on women's aptitude for careers in science and architecture in the 40s, in the 50s. So very, very early proponent of STEM in a way. Johnson O'Connor was a polymath. He was raised in Chicago. He went to Harvard, secured engineering degrees. He did postgraduate work in astronomy and metallurgy. And then he joined the Lynn Works of the General Electric Company in 1922. And the head of the Lynn Works at GE realized, we're testing all of our products rigorously. Everything that we put into our products we're testing, but they had no testing program for job applicants or promotions. So O'Connor was tasked with developing a testing regime for the company. He did this, and Johnson recalled that working at GE, he recalled the case of an employee. She wasn't performing well in several positions that she tried. All of the positions she had tried required tremendous manual dexterity. She went through the testing. She was found to have excellent observation skills. Instead of dexterity, she was moved to an inspection job where she performed well. She got promotion, she made more money, and GE enjoyed increased efficiency and employee retention. So the testing worked. While at GE, Johnson O'Connor published his first book, Born That Way, shows that this then novel idea that aptitudes were something that we were born with, they were innate, and it's something that you had to figure out what they were to thrive. In 1931, he married Eleanor Manning, a pioneering woman architect. She specialized in historic preservation, public housing, and urban planning. She was the first woman to graduate from MIT. She was a founding member of the nation's second women-owned architectural firm. In addition to architecture, she took an active role in her husband's research on women's aptitude. This is an article she wrote in 1934, where she analyzed the aptitude research that her husband was doing, that pointed out that women were well suited to careers that she had pursued in architecture, and later she would expand that research to careers in medicine and science, which she also felt women would excel at. The work of the Chicago branch of the Human Engineering Laboratory was picked up in the local press, particularly by the Tribune, and a career advice column written by Ruth McKay, known as White Collar Girl. In the 1940s and 50s, McKay promoted Johnson O'Connor's research that showed women excelling in several areas of aptitude. After his success at GE and in academia, Johnson O'Connor expanded his testing program to the public to help young people and adults discern careers. He called his testing facilities human engineering laboratories. And he opened the first of what will become a national network of labs at 347 Beacon Street, an 1885 mansion in Boston's Back Bay, which is now a local landmark district there. Johnson O'Connor intentionally located his centers in residential buildings to provide his clients with a familiar setting. He didn't want his testing centers to feel like classrooms. And when you look at where they were locating their early labs, it seems to have been a pattern of always choosing historic residential buildings like this one. And we haven't found any evidence of this, but I think there's a distinct possibility that Eleanor Manning's interest in historic architecture might have influenced some of these choices. And you see the pattern in Chicago. In 1938, the foundation branched out from Boston and opened their second lab here in Chicago. That year, Frances Glessner Lee, the daughter of John and Frances Glessner, donated the family's house at 1800 South Prairie to the Armour Institute of Technology, which is now Glenwood Tech. They were sponsoring O'Connor to come to Chicago, Oklahoma Center. In addition to testing here, the O'Connor's open house to architecture students and built up an architectural library in it for the foundation's clients. It's really interesting. So they had to leave the Western House. The next place they landed was here in 1945. This is the Second Empire building that was home to Cyrus H. McCormick from 1879. This was later replaced by the offices of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. So it was demolished in the 50s. So yeah, the foundation moved across Michigan Avenue to less grand, but still very dignified, the Erie Street Row, where it remains today. And one more example, to beat a dead horse, the foundation's patronage of historic architecture. This is the place that they picked up in 1952 in Manhattan. It was the Fabry Mansion. It was built by the Vanderbilt family in 1899. Foundation recently sold this property to the State Department of Japan for its mission to the United Nations. Your preliminary recommendation of October found that the building meets the separate integrity criteria, and we acknowledge that the two westernmost parts of Row were demolished in 1960. However, the remaining three continue to convey the Row's historic and architectural values. The Joliet limestone facade has been painted. That stone shows no significant signs of distress. The original cornice is still there. Many of the windows are still there. So obviously these are deteriorating. It's a 150-year-old building. As I discussed earlier, those 1920 alterations to the building are significant. In your preliminary vote in October, you had an expanded definition of significant features. Well, it began with all exterior elevations, including roof lines of the building, which is your standard. In addition to this, you added two statements to allow flexibility in how this building can be put to new uses to support its preservation long term. The first of these pertain to these rear portions of the building. So this is the 3-story common brick boiler house addition and 1-story common brick garage at the rear or south elevation of the building. These are obviously have no architectural treatment and they're not invisible from the public way. So you stated the commission might approve demolition of these parts of the building to support a new use. The secondary flexibility that you added in your vote in October pertained to allowing a visible addition to the building. The rationale for doing this is seen in this photograph of the building's current context in the urban core with very high density in its immediate surroundings. So you would allow a visible addition, but you set some conditions on that it should be set back from the property line to a depth of 1/2 of the building lot. And the goal of that setback was to avoid, a sense of facadeectomy, that the historic building will appear to be an independent structure. And the visible addition could fade into the background of the other tall buildings in the context. Here's a plot of survey of the building. At the top of the pink form is the front of the building facing Erie. We can see those appendages, which are unimportant, at the south. So that setback of 1/2 of the building lot is 37 feet from the front facade. So what you said is you could do a visible addition as long as it was set back approximately that far. And over the past 8 months that the designation has been in process, we've had numerous meetings and emails and discussions with the owner's consultant about the setback. And we asked them to show us some renderings of showing a massing on the building, wireframe massing on the building at different setbacks from this 50% of the lot. And based on what we saw, our opinion is that you may have a setback that's not quite this deep that will still work. It will still meet your tests of allowing the historic building to read as an independent structure. and not appear to be just a facade activity. So what we're recommending, that brings me to our recommendations, is to revise the significant historical and architectural features that you identified in October. And the goal is to focus on that setback of a visible addition. On the left on this slide is what you stated in October, where we recommend removing the reference to a setback of 1/2 of the building lot, which is struck out. On the right is staff's recommended revision with adjustments, yellow and bold. It says visible additions may be approved that are substantially set back from the front facade, so that the historic building retains sufficient depth to read as a whole structure. It goes on to say any visible addition should appear distinct from its historic building when viewed from a pedestrian perspective along the public way. The overall height, setback, height, and mass of any proposed addition shall be evaluated based on its visibility and resulting impact on the historic structure. Of course, this is less prescriptive than 1/2 of the building lot, but we believe with these adjustments, you're going to have some common sense flexibility to preserve the building while still providing you and PRC clarity to evaluate any future addition. These recommended changes only apply to this portion of the significant features. There's no change proposed to other part of that language. The building is located in the 42nd Ward. Alderman Riley is in support of this. He also is in support of revising the significant features language as I discussed. As I noted above, the building is owned by the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation. They would like to sell the property. It's become a maintenance burden for them, and programmatically, it really is not working for them. Ann Steiner is the president of the foundation, and she has flown in from Seattle today to attend the meeting and would like to make a statement to you. But prior to that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Matt. Does the commissioner have any questions from that? And then, Ms. Steiner?
Hello,
Hi.
thank you for,
Coming in Chicago.
yeah, thank you for having me and allowing me to come and address and speak to you all. I wanted to, since part of the historic nature of this building is apparently that it's connected to our,
Just that, but for the record, because we are being recorded, I do need you to state your name and your organization.
yes, I'm
For
sorry.
the record.
My name is Ann Steiner. I'm the executive director of the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, which you were just hearing about. And I flew in from Seattle to come here and address you all, and I want to thank you for allowing me to make this statement. So I wanted to first say that the reason in the hearing that we had in May, I wasn't able to attend. My consultant represented me, and the reason we did not consent to the landmarking is, our concern is viability for a sale, so I was concerned that the substantial setback was going to make it, not attractive to be able to sell it to anyone because this lot is short, like it has a short depth anyway. So anyway, I just wanted to trace back a little bit. So in 2017 is when I became the executive director. We had this building for many decades by then, and it had suffered through many decades of deferred maintenance. I decided, let's see, should we try to rehab it? Should we try to sell it? And so we got somebody to come in, structural engineer, who just, said, what can we do just to make it safe? Just to make it safe. And he said, he went through and looked at everything, and mostly because of the electrical and the plumbing, he said about $500,000 minimum to get it to just a minimally habitable condition. And so we're a nonprofit. We don't have but $500,000 laying around. So we decided the best thing to do would be to sell the building. Any income or, proceeds from the sale would not come to me. It would go right into the foundation to support our mission and our work. But let me just kind of walk through the process a little bit. When we decided to sell the building, we knew it was an orange rated building, and we knew that it possibly, was going to go through landmarks, and that they would, give a recommendation for landmarking or not. And it was very, that's something that we knew, and I thought, hey, maybe I could just find out what they would say. Maybe I can have a meeting and they can just say like, hey, this is what we would say, and so then we would have an answer. We didn't really, like, we had a meeting, we actually managed to have a meeting, but we didn't really get an answer about anything in specific, so we decided, well, we're just gonna try to sell the building and then we're gonna see what happens. That, you know, that was 8 years ago, so a lot of things have happened since then, including COVID and a lot of things. So last year, we thought, we were informed, and I guess this was a mistake, but we were informed that the best way to get Landmarks to actually take a look and make an actual recommendation was to file a demo permit. And I understand that this was not the right thing to do now, and I'm sorry that I did that. But I was taking advice from someone who I thought knew and I didn't know, so that's what I did, and I apologize if that was the wrong way to go. And once we got into it and we tried to withdraw the demo permit, we weren't to make the clock stop ticking for this landmark designation, the 6 months and everything. And we weren't able to do that. So even though we withdrew the demo permit, the clock kept ticking. So we've gone through this process and we've tried to negotiate and say like, hey, we just want a building that is viable to sell. We don't want anything bad to happen to the building. We do like it, but it's we can't afford to maintain it or fix it. It's not just maintaining it, but fixing it. So I also wanted to so then when Landmarks did come in and they did make the preliminary recommendation to Landmark, I admit I was a little bit surprised because we did our own research on the building, you know, trying to guess what Landmarks might say. You know, it's only part of the building. It's an unknown architect. We were surprised that they wanted to landmark it, but it does look nice, as you can see. It has a nice facade. But I'm not an expert on architecture, so I will leave that to people who are. But I do want to speak to the piece that's connected to Johnson O'Connor, because that is, you know, my life's work here. So Johnson O'Connor and Eleanor Manning, his wife, they did love old buildings, and wherever they wanted to open an office, they would purchase a building. And so we have purchased and sold many, many buildings over the years. We've owned buildings in San Diego and Philadelphia and Detroit and, you know, just all over the place. And we had that building in New York, and we have a building still in Boston, the one that you showed, and then we'll have this one. And Johnson O'Connor always meant for those buildings to serve the foundation. And they served as testing centers, research centers for the aptitude testing research that we do. And then they were also assets that could be sold if and when the foundation needed those funds or needed to move out of a city. Like, so we have, you know, bought and sold many buildings over the years. And this one, he grew up in Chicago. He never lived here in this building or worked at this building. But it was, you know, it was connected to our foundation just because they owned it. But like Eleanor Manning worked in Boston, and that's where she had her architecture firm and so on. So this one was kind of, you know, the third choice, as you said. So it's, even though it does look nice, I don't think they considered it, you know, the architecture marvel that the other houses that they were in did. Is kind of a third choice. But regardless, we don't want to be in the real estate business, and we don't want to be in the historic preservation business. We are in the aptitude testing business, and we're a nonprofit, and we are struggling right now, like many nonprofits. We're in the middle of, you know, our aptitude testing is hands-on, it's in person, and it's very expensive because of that. And so we're developing a whole digital battery. We're spending $2 million on this project. It's due to be done next year. We're very excited about it. We think that's going to help our financial situation. But that's going to be even less need for real estate and office space than, you know, we even currently have. And I just want to say that, you know, I won't belabor all the maintenance horror stories that we have, but we have many of them over the years. And you know, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. We're very, you know, our clients come in here, our workers in here, there's rats, there's cracks, and there's a party wall, like from the demolition that is the not meant to be an exterior wall, that is an exterior wall. So there's, you know, kind of ticking time bombs sometimes with some of these things, and we're not prepared to be able to spend the money to fix anything. Much as we might like to, you know, even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to. So we would really love if we could, you know, come up with something that would work for all of us, for a potential buyer, for the city of Chicago, for us, for the building. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Does the commission have any questions? Yeah, I appreciate you explaining the history and everything. I guess the only comment that I would have is that, the history of landmark properties in Chicago, with additions of new additions have been, pretty beneficial. And we've seen that happen time and time again. So, you're an extremely, good location.
Right.
Where you are. And as anybody in real estate, business will say location, location, location. I'm sure, Gail's going to speak to you about that. With that, Gail, with the floor to you.
Sure. And thank you so much. I'm here, Gail Scream, on behalf of SOAR, the Streeterville Organization of Active Residents. I've actually made our source statement several times at the different meetings. I brought copies again. I don't feel like I necessarily have to read it again to you, but definitely SOAR supports landmarking this property. We feel it is a great addition to the neighborhood. We think old places have really important spaces in our neighborhood. We have lost so many, and they add to the whole character of the neighborhood, of what the neighborhood used to look like. And I'm a big fan of Cat Streeter and the history of the neighborhood. We've done documentaries on the neighborhood, and so we would love to be able to preserve any piece of the neighborhood that we still can. So with that, I'm happy to give you additionally another copy of my statement, but I think you have it already. So thank you for all you do, and we really hope to save this building.
Thank you. Ward, your turn.
Sure. Thank you, commissioners. Ward Miller for the record, Ward Miller, Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. We too support this designation. This is a 150-year-old building built after the Chicago fire. We lost a number of these in recent years, including one at Superior and Wells recently that slipped through the cracks, so to speak. And it's really tragic to see this happening. But we do understand that this is a visual connection to the neighborhood through time. It offers a sense of what Michigan Avenue as Pine Street and the early Gulf Coast and Streeterville were. It also adds a sense of scale, and it provides a place for small businesses that normally can't afford to be in larger, more contemporary buildings. And that makes it very special in so many ways. The building's got, to use a non-architectural term, extreme charm, if you will, to the streetscape. And it provides a sense of human scale, but also provides a sense of place. It's not a building that you can find anywhere in the United States. It's a really special building to a time period, and it's surrounded by very tall buildings. And that's why we also want to thank you, the commission and the staff, for considering the various ideas for possibly incorporating an addition that would be mid-sized, maybe taller behind this facade. And it seems like the real discussion is how far back from that facade. And I think once there's a proposal that'll present itself, I think we can really focus in on some changes. And the changes you suggested are really amazing and helpful. We've seen this happen before downtown with the Legacy and the Heritage, where buildings on Wabash Avenue in the Jewelers District and beyond were preserved, and with 12 buildings placed in the center of them using those facades. To the passerby, they're wonderful developments. And it really does extend the life of these buildings that oftentimes need a lot of TLC and a lot of help after 150 years. It's amazing that these buildings survive. So with that, and you have a previous statements from us of Preservation Chicago on file, we very much support the landmark designation of this building.
Thank you, Ward. Nobody else has signed up to speak in this matter. If there's any other further discussion, if not, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the final landmark recommendation of City Council for the Erie Street Road at 161 East Erie Street. There's a motion by Commissioner Turkowitz, second. Second by Commissioner Fair. Commissioner Boatright,
Yes.
Commissioner Fair, oh, you did the second. Commissioner Rubin,
Yes.
Commissioner Tulliver,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. The motion carries unanimously. Good luck. We're an interesting real estate market. I think you're gonna.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
I think it's right on.
Next item on the agenda is the program committee report and I'm going to
Program Committee of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks met on Friday, May 16, 2025, to consider the following nomination for the National Register of Historic Places. On Elm Merchants Association Building, 2216 South Wentworth Avenue, the 11th Ward, and the Charles and Emma Brock House, 1436 West Foster Avenue, in the 48th Ward. The committee, consisting of myself and Commissioner Burns, voted to accept the Historic Preservation Division staff reports on the nominations, to recommend approval of the National Register listing for both properties. Program committee's vote on the nomination to recommend the online Merchants Association building at 2216 South Wentworth Avenue for listing on the National Register was unanimous. Program committee's vote on the nomination to recommend the Charles and Emma Brock House at 1436 West Foster Avenue for listing on the National Register was unanimous. This ends my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Tulliver. Any questions by the commission? On the report, no other comments. The public has not signed up to speak. Therefore, I'd like to request a motion to approve the recommendations of the program committee and the nominations of the Only Merchants Association building and the Charles and Emma Brock House to the National Register of Historic Places. The motion. Commissioner Judgment in a second. Second by Commissioner Rubin. Commissioner Bowman.
Yes.
Commissioner Fair.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The motion carries. Thank you for your service. Okay. Next item on the agenda is program review committee. Commissioner Jennings.
Thank you, Chairman. The program review committee reviewed 3 projects at its May 8th, 2025 meeting. All 3 projects were approved with conditions. The report summarizing the scope of the proposed project and the committee's decisions was included in your packets. This report is for information and for the record.
Thank you. Emily?
Thank you. For the month of May, staff approved 158 permit applications. A total of 190 reviews were performed by staff, and the average number of days to issue approval or corrections was 7 days.
Cool. Any questions? Now, I'm going to ask for a request motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you so much. My name. Wow.